Hey, what's going on? Welcome to Dharma Time. I am your host, the Dharma Guy. Welcome to WPSN99.com. For those of you who are not watching Facebook Live at the moment, we just lost our... basically, what could go wrong will go wrong today is what we're looking at here. And I'm watching the feed live on the laptop in front of me, so I get to see the trip there. So, anyways, welcome to WPSN99.com. Thank you so much for listening. For those of you who used to see me on the couch live, this is now my new show, the Dharma Guy, or Dharma Time, excuse me. I am still the Dharma Guy, and I'm... What's up? Oh, there we go. Anyways, I'm sorry. We're at technical difficulties today, so for those of you who are listening earlier, you might have heard some starts, some stops. But, hey, day one, what else? What could you ask for? Let's do some really quick house cleaning, first and foremost. I want to thank the sponsors. They're why we can do this. You're looking at Journey Pure, which is our sponsor for the main network, the Problem Solving Network. Next one is Retreat Premier Addiction Centers. Thank you guys both for helping us out here at the studio. And also, I'm sorry, that intro, was that not awesome? Thank you so much for Jake Atkins, man. You made that possible. I appreciate it, brother. Anybody who needs any music made or something like that, by all means, reach out to me, and I will connect you with Jake. Every time I hear that, I'm in love with it more and more. I can't believe it. When I first heard it, I was like, I don't know. I like it, but I don't. But now I love it. I got to say, it gets me hyped up, man. I had no energy prior to this, but now I do. Having said that, for those of you who listen to the Couch Live, I would be remiss if I didn't at least acknowledge that the Dope Doctor is here. Oh, you're going to start the thing there. I like that. So, the Dope Doctor is our producer, which is probably why the show didn't kick off perfectly the way it's supposed to.
Hey, I could turn the mic on, you know.
There you go. Anyways, so he's here, and for those of you who usually see him in person, I have to say he's dressed more like the Dharma Guy today. He's got some sandals on. He's got the cargo shorts. He's doing the thing. I like it. So, the Dharma Time. What is Dharma Time? Why do we have it? I think it's important to acknowledge that where we're at today, man. I think a lot of people in the world are suffering. I think there's a lot of things going on if you're paying attention to the news, the media. People are getting arrested left and right for sexual mishaps, if you will. I'm going to be gentle and call it that. You got the political stuff in the news. You got people being accosted, murdered. I mean, there's all sorts of craziness happening. Not to mention, if you have social media like I do, which I'm assuming we all do at this point, you get to see posts left and right. People asking for help. People talking about, going through things, whether it be family situations, job situations. Hey, my kids are going through some terrible moments at the current ongoing, whatever you want to call it. Your terrible towel screwed me up there, just so you know. I'm not a Steelers fan, by the way, but I'm looking right at a terrible towel behind the camera here. Anyways, my point being is I think part of the issue that we're having at the moment is a lack of spirituality. And I can attest to that myself, which we'll get into before the show's over, kind of my journey, because at one point in my life, I did not consider myself a spiritual person. And for those of you out there who knew me years ago, you probably agree with that assessment. Maybe even be surprised that I do call myself the Dharma Guy now, and I'm talking about it on air. So I'm going to get a little bit into that and talk about it. But first, I want to say that I want to cover some misconceptions because, the name of the show is the Dharma or Dharma Time. My name is Dharma Guy, and that obviously refers to Buddhism. And every time the word Buddhism comes up, or spirituality for that matter, there's a ton of misconceptions, and typically my own personal experience, whether it be just individuals that I know, or I'm in an office setting or somewhere, and we're discussing these types of topics, where I'm in a group, and I'm running a group at a different treatment facility. Oh, somebody calling me. Anyways, if I'm at a group, and at a treatment facility, and I'm trying to talk about spirituality, just the word spirituality, you can kind of see almost, in a figurative fashion, you can see the entire room split, right? You have the individuals who are like myself, atheists, who are instantly hear spirituality, think religion, and go to their little corner. I'm not listening to anything like that. And then you have the other group who already have their religion, whatever their faith is, whatever they've grown up with, whatever they're comfortable with. And they immediately think, hey, I've already got mine. I don't need to hear anything he has to say. It's going to contradict my own beliefs, and then they run to that corner. And so my job typically at that point, at least for the first however many minutes, is to bring them together and make them teachable, or at least let them listen, right? So that's what I'm going to attempt to do now. Uh, so the misconceptions I hear all the time are that it's a religion, and I'm going to argue that it's not a religion based upon my definition and quite a few others. Having said that, I've noticed that over the years I've been practicing Buddhism, I've noticed that it's usually the people who don't practice it refer to it as a religion. And the people who do practice it typically refer to it as a philosophy or a way of life, things of that nature, a path, if you will. I personally call it a way of life. That's just kind of my guiding principles, if you will, my path is what I call it. So, reason why I don't call it a religion is there's no deity, right? There's no God in it. There's no higher power. There's no special magical person in the clouds. There's no none of that, basically. So Buddha, also known as Siddhartha Gautama, was not a god. He was just a regular guy. You could think of him as a teacher, basically somebody who figured some things out and decided to teach the rest of us. There's some validity to it in the sense that, gosh, it's been around for over 3,000 years, man. It's very, very old, and we're talking about it now on the other side of the country, or excuse me, the other side of the world. So there's something to it. Having said that, he's not a god. He's not some being. And the guy you see on my shirt actually at the moment is not technically Siddhartha, right? There's another version of Buddhism, which we won't get into it, called the Mahayana, and they believe in multiple different ones and things of that nature. And that's usually the big fat guy that you see, the one that's on my shirt currently. But the real one is is this one. For those of you who can see on who are watching on Facebook Live or watching the YouTube channel, that's him. Basically, the skinnier Indian guy with the weird headdress is essentially the real Siddhartha Gautama. So, the other reason why I don't consider religion is it doesn't address afterlife at all. It doesn't talk about like a heaven or a hell. And immediately, some of you guys might be thinking, "Hey, what about reincarnation?" Well, it kind of depends on how you define reincarnation, right? So, oftentimes people think of reincarnation as I'm going to die and come back as somebody else. I'm going to die and come back as, I don't know, a bird, whatever you want to call it. Uh, that is one way of thinking of reincarnation, and it's closer in line with like some of the Hindu beliefs that are popular in that area. But I don't personally teach it that way. Sorry, guys, I've been under the weather lately. So the way I teach the idea, I guess, of reincarnation is, in theory, every second that passes, the old you dies. And I know that's kind of a deep, especially for the first show, but in theory, what happens is that you walk into a room, let's say you have a great conversation with somebody, a great meeting. When you walk out of that room, you're a different person than you are when you walked in. And that's kind of what I mean, is every minute we have that opportunity, we have that option, if you will, to be reborn, essentially. So we can, every second we can choose to be different than we were the second before. Give me 1 second. I'm getting parched over here. I don't have my crutch today, man. I don't have my co-host here. Or I guess I'm his co-host, maybe. I don't know how you want to refer to that. But I usually let him do all the heavy lifting. I just sit back and try to chime in every few minutes. Now I got to carry the load. My back's starting to hurt here. Anyways, so the other misconceptions I hear all the time. Let's see. There's no doctrine, right? There's no like 10 Commandments. There's no definitive do this or do that, or don't do this, don't do that. It's more of a basic philosophy, right? So if all your decision making revolves around this basic philosophy of what you value and what you don't value, you'll stay in line with the Buddhist path. And what I mean by that is my path can be very different than your path, and your path can be very different than the person next to you, so on and so forth. So the things that you value and your path is going to look completely different than mine. And that's what I mean by there's no doctrine. In other words, there's no golden set of rules that we all have to abide by. It's essentially experiential, not faith-based. What that means is don't have faith that this works, that this is going to help you achieve enlightenment, happiness, whatever you want to call it. Instead, practice it, try it, and if it works, keep it. If it doesn't work, then don't use it. And it's been my experience that when I started out, things like compassion, love, and things along that that spectrum, if you will, weren't very easy for me to start. So I didn't do those at start. What I did when I first started my path was I thought more on the intellectual route, and then over time, practicing the intellectual route, the other stuff kind of made sense and it was easier for me to do. The love, the compassion, and so on and so forth. So, other misconceptions I could think of right off the bat. That's those are the main ones that people think it's a religion. It's not about self denial. It's not about any of those other topics, which I'm sure at some point we'll get to as shows progress. Um, However, I think now is a good time to talk about my path, right? And I alluded to this a little earlier about you know kind of where I came from and how I found Buddhism, and so I'd like to kind of start there, just so y'all know who you're talking to and who you're gonna hopefully continue to listen to over the next coming weeks and shows and possibly benefit from. So I all right. So I was raised Christian, like most people in America at this point. I'm assuming. I was brought up Christian. We went to church. My mother, probably still listening at the moment, she's a God fearing woman. She still practices Christianity. That's her faith. We've had several conversations about that. But I practiced Christianity up until, I don't know, maybe early middle school. And at that point, I started asking questions that nobody can answer for me. Like, it stopped giving me answers. It stopped giving me a sense of fulfillment. It stopped giving me my path, if you will, my way. Um, I was filled with a considerable amount of anger up to that point in my life. I grew up, and my home life is mostly filled, from my perspective, anyways, with not so great memories. Not to say that there weren't. There were some fantastic memories. My mother was a fantastic mother. Having said that, there was issues that took place early on in the home that kind of filled me with some anger and some rage and things of that nature, which, once again, future shows that we'll get into, especially when we start talking about forgiveness, which is a big dirty word for a lot of people. Anyways, so grew up Christian home. At some point, it stopped answering questions for me, and then I was kind of an atheist, but not an outspoken atheist, right? In other words, I didn't tell people that's what I was. I just kind of avoided God talks and things of that nature. And then I would start debating some people just to get their opinions and their thoughts, but I wouldn't express my own, because that's also a very dirty word in a lot of circles, is to start talking about disbelief or atheism. So kept going on that path for a while. Made some different decisions, and then eventually, I don't remember the exact date. I don't remember what year it was, but that's my producer's phone going off. Anyways, there was a point in my life, though, where I kind of woke up and I just said, hey, you know what? I'm an atheist. I just came to that conclusion, right? And so, for those of you who don't know, atheism just you don't believe. Other words, if I were to tell you guys all, hey, there's unicorns outside, you guys wouldn't necessarily hate unicorns or get mad at me. You just don't believe in them, so it doesn't affect you either way. That's kind of, in a nutshell, what atheism is supposed to be. For some people, it might be different, but in reality, that's what it is. Just, you don't believe, right? And so, from my perspective, I'm all about science-based type things. I need proof, and for me, I haven't seen proof that Christianity or that realm is true. And so I claimed atheism, and that was a big moment, big turning point in my life. I had 3 big moments. That wasn't one of them, but we'll talk about them here in a minute. But I did have a moment where I was like, hey, I'm atheist. I declared that. Very interesting moment when I did that. For me, it was a big moment, but it was also like a weird release. And then it was interesting seeing the feedback from everybody. I used to always get all sorts of comments on the tattoos and things of that nature, but a lot more people were understanding of my look than they were of my religious beliefs. When I came out with that, the judgment was real. It was very interesting to see the people who were totally cool that I thought would judge me based upon my appearance, but had a real problem with my religious beliefs. It was a weird kind of coming out that a lot of people just didn't know how to take, including myself. But anyways, I digress. So that was the path I started to go on, and then once again, I was filled with a lot of angst, anger, rage from my upbringing or the things I experienced, and not knowing how to deal with that anger, that frustration. I hurt a lot of the people around me. I was in a lot of really bad relationships, not just intimate relationships, but friends, businesses, things of that nature, and kind of progressed through life until finally I came to a point in my life where I realized my best thinking got me where I'm at. which is a huge concept, right? When it comes to the philosophy in Buddhism. But so I realized my best thinking got me where I'm at, and I became teachable. And that was the moment I stumbled upon, this philosophy, this way of life. So um, let's talk about moments, because I'm huge on moments. I think we all have moments in our lives where we can think back that kind of change the course that we were on, or our path, if you will. Um, and so I have three definitive moments in my life that I think formed where I'm currently at and where I'm currently going. Having said that, I think that there's a very real case to be made that I'll have more moments going on in the future, but I can only comment on the ones that have already taken place. So my first moment was I was 15 years old. Sorry, guys. Once again, I promise you the health will get better. So I first moment I was 15 years old, and up to that point, once again, I was filled with angst and anger. Basically, anything illegal that you could think of, I either did or I was a part of it. And I was just looking for a reason to be angry. I would make up reasons. I had a lot of anger towards family. There's a lot of abuse in the home, things of that nature. I saw things I shouldn't have seen that kind of affected my outlook and my temperament, if you will. And so growing up, not knowing how to cope with any of that, I didn't know. No, nobody took the time out to say, "Hey, how's this little boy dealing with what he's seen, what he's been put through?" As adults, they were more concerned, and rightfully so, with how they're going to make it through the next day. How are they going to get along? How are they going to pay the bills? And I don't think, especially back then, and we're talking like early '80s now, um, there wasn't as much publicity around how we're going to, psychologically handle the things that happen to us. I was kind of raised. I think on last Friday's show, Louie and I were talking about we were at the tail end of like some of the physical things, right? So I was on the tail end of that whole, get some tough skin and figure it out kind of a thing. So consequently, I figured it out. Problem is, I figured it out in ways that weren't conducive to a happy lifestyle, and I didn't realize that until much later on in life. So, uh, getting suspended, getting almost expelled, doing all sorts of horrible things. My early years, 15 years old, 2 o'clock in the morning, police come in the house, then banging on the door, come in, drag me out of my bedroom, put me in the back of the police car, and tell me at that point I'm going to jail for 15 to life. And my mom worked in law enforcement up to that point, and so I was able to dodge quite a few accountability moments, if you will, in my life because of that. Because she was LEO, she was able to pull some strings and kind of, hey, get me out of troubled situations. And so I didn't take anything seriously. Nothing scared me. I always thought I was too smart. I didn't care. I had it all figured out. However, at 15 years old, when you're told that you're going to jail until you're over 30, I don't know about you guys, but that terrified me. That was the one moment, like, I was like, hey, wait a minute. Maybe I need to do some things differently. And so that's moment number one. Moment number one was when I realized that my current path, my way of getting involved in things I shouldn't be involved in is going to lead me down a path that is going to give me things that I don't want, right? So I was seeing warning signs, and I listened to them. So at 15, I decided to stop doing all the illegal activity, stay away from all the gang activity, stay away from all the drug selling activity, all the violence. Just, all right, I'm done. So I got new friends, focused more of my attention on school and just doing the quote unquote right thing. So at that point, moved on, got through high school. Straight out of high school, I was that guy that messed up the curve for everybody. Had a 4.0 all the way through everything. School just came really easy for me. So as you can imagine, I was cocky, right? So I was roughly 18. I left the Chamber of Commerce at the time that I was working at, and a couple other relatively quote unquote prestigious jobs, if you will, state attorney's office, courthouse, stuff like that. And then I ended up at this place called Emory, which was eventually taken over by the Postal Service. And for those of you who don't know, Postal Service, as far as economically is concerned, is considered a great career. A lot of people go there and they stay there for the rest of their lives, and that's it. And so for me, at 18, 19 years old, to be hired at a place making $50,000, $60,000 plus a year, I thought I had it all figured out. I've got the intelligence, right? So I have the book smarts to back up a lot of stuff. I had the street smarts because a lot of people I came into contact with couldn't relate to me on that level. So I felt that was like a a positive in a sense, at that point in my life. And then I was making financially really good money at that age. So you're talking at 21, I was able to buy a house. I was able to pay for motorcycles and take trips and just get the things that I wanted in life. So I kind of reached that point in my life where what are you going to tell me, right? I thought I had it all figured out. I was smart. I had money. I had a good job. I didn't want to listen to anybody. I spent all my time basically blaming everybody else for all my problems. I had a ton of built up rage and anger from all those feelings and the lack of coping skills from all the things that I witnessed and went through growing up. And then I convinced myself that I was correct and I was right in all my decision making because look at all the success I'm having. And so to me, the financial success and the moving forward was sufficient justification essentially for my behavior, my actions. And while I stopped illegal activity, I didn't stop that mentality. And that mentality, I'm looking back on my life, probably caused more problems for me than the stuff that I witnessed or went through in early childhood. And what I mean by that, this and maybe some of you guys can relate. Once again, that's why we have Dharma time, right? And that is this mentality of I wanted to be right more than I wanted to be happy, right? And so for those of you who know me or who have been through any of my groups or classes, that's one of my big phrases. My big phrase is you can be right or you can be happy. That doesn't mean you can't be both, but a lot of times it comes down to that decision of which one means more to you. And so in that period of my life, being right meant way more to me than anything else. I thought right was happy. I associated right with happy. So I was that guy that would not back down from any arguments or fights or confrontations or whatever it may be. I would come up with quote unquote proof, all these things that I knew to back up my stance. I was that one that if something negative or something bad happened, I would be angry, probably excessively angry, but I would have like a million people behind me all agreeing. And I'm sure we can relate. We're either that person ourselves or we know somebody like that that's constantly got drama, constantly kind of angry about whatever it may be. And when you ask them, it's never like, yeah, maybe that was a little excessive. No, it's always, well, of course I was angry because such and such. And they point the finger and they blame whomever it is or whatever it is that upset them. And that was me. I was that guy, right? So that caused tremendous amount of problems in my life. Trouble with authority figures, of course. Basically any relationship that I got into, regardless of where they were at in their path of life, whether how far advanced they were emotionally or not, it didn't matter, right? So for me, I just lost my connection. So that's why we listen to WPSN 99, kids. Anyways, so regardless of where they were at emotionally, I personally wasn't going to be ready for a relationship, whether it be a good friend or even a romantic relationship, because I just wasn't in a position to accept my role in anything. I wasn't interested in listening to their perspective on anything. And so created tons of problems as far as that's concerned. Now we're building up to my second moment, right? Second moment was, I don't remember the exact date. This was years ago now. I was still working for the Postal Service at the time. And my problem with the Postal Service was a great career for a lot of people who that's what they're looking for. That's what they want. For me personally, it wasn't stimulating enough. I didn't feel like I was progressing or moving forward. And I felt that it was paying me just enough money to live, but not enough to kind of really live, if you know what I mean. And so I was filled with a ton of rage and anger there as well. I look back on some of the stuff I did. I can't believe, it was insane. But I was constantly in battles there. I was part of the union. I was constantly filing grievances and fighting with the managers and whatnot. Even had a few choice words for fellow employees as well. And for those of you listening, sorry, I was a different person back then. But regardless, so that was the moment that I had to kind of start to realize that my best thinking got me where I'm at. And what caused that was, once again, at the Postal Service, wasn't getting fulfilled, very angry, constantly involved in like little wars and stuff. I started a business back then. It was Trinity Fitness. For those of you who know me, I still have it. I still do it. But I started it then, and it wasn't doing what I wanted to do. It wasn't progressing the way I thought that it should, Because once again, I thought I was the man, and I thought I had all the right answers. So if I have all the right answers, then why is this not working? So I was getting frustrated at that as well. At the time, I was with my children's mother, and we're no longer together, and there's reasons for that. But at the time, I blamed her for everything, and I was just distraught. It wasn't a good home situation to come home to every day. We were fighting constantly, just we weren't getting along. And then uh, even in the gym, the workouts and stuff were suffering. I wasn't getting what I wanted out of that. So essentially, I got to a point where I looked around and everything around me just sucked, right? And so at the Postal Service, they had these things called early outs. And early outs are essentially, hey, I got all my work done for the evening. Can I go home? And because you're guaranteed 8 hours. And so I would beg and beg and beg. And finally, I was allowed to go home or to leave the facility, I guess. And so I was excited to do that. And then I met up with my buddy, Terrence, if you're listening. What's up, buddy? I met him at this bar by the airport. I walked in, and I just remember being very, very, very upset. I was disappointed because like, hey, I'm a grown man, and why was I begging somebody to give me an hour off to go hang out with my friend and have a beer or something? And so I just remember how disappointed I was in that. And then I looked around, and I saw a bunch of other people who were all kind of doing the same thing, essentially going through a life that wasn't giving them what they wanted, wasn't fulfilling, and then being excited for like a 1 hour reprieve, all to just wake up tomorrow and do the exact same thing all over again. And so I was, it kind of, I don't know, it rubbed me the wrong way. And I think part of it was, aside from everything in my life kind of not doing what I needed to do, which caused me to start thinking about things differently. In addition to that, I watched a movie called Moon, which I won't kill it for anybody. I recommend go watching. It's a very cool movie. But at the end of it, it got me to thinking. It kind of blew me away a little bit. And then in researching kind of what I was feeling from watching that, I found Marx's essay, A Strange Labor. I'm not a Marxist by any means. Please don't go out there spreading that around. But I read the essay, and it was very interesting. Essentially, what it was saying was, in a typical capitalist society, we go to work and make just enough money to continue to live in order to go back to work. In other words, I make just enough money to keep the lights on and keep things sustained enough for me to go back to work the very next day. And so once again, all this stuff was like a perfect storm, right? And I think that's what I needed. Because I was so cocky and arrogant, and I thought I had it all figured out, I really needed, I hate to call it rock bottom, but I really needed a lot of really big, bright signals to tell me, bro, you're thinking about it all wrong. And so I showed up to Bennigan's by the airport back when it existed. I showed up, I ordered a beer, and my buddy Terrence, for those of you who know him, who are maybe watching this that knew him from the Postal Service, you'll completely understand what I'm talking about. But for those of you who don't, he's a buddy of mine, and he's got this unique ability to always have an answer, no matter what it is, right? And it's usually an obscure, crazy, off-the-wall answer, but he never not has an answer, right? So I looked over to him, and I said, bro, is this it? Is this life? Like, is this what I got to look forward to for the rest of my life? Is to basically wake up every day, go through, crap after crap after crap, basically a miserable life at that point, go to a job that I can't stand, to do work I don't want to do, all to get like an hour to go out and have a beer with my friends, just to wake up tomorrow and do it again. I was like, is this it? Is this what life is? Because if that's the case, bro, I don't want to do this anymore. And I'll never forget, still to this day, and I've known this dude forever, he's seen me have kids, he's seen me get married, I've seen him get, divorced, married again, have kids, been through a lot together. And never before that, and never since that, has he ever uttered those words that he did that night. His words were, I don't know. And for some of you guys, that might not sound like anything. But for me, that's exactly what I needed to hear. Because, once again, I value myself as being a smart guy. So when I reach out, I just needed him to give me anything. If he would have given me anything, I could have justified it all away. I could have blamed him. I could have blamed whatever he told me. I could have been life, whatever you want to call it. But him saying, I don't know, forced me to rethink things. And so that was the moment I became teachable. What I mean by teachable is that was the moment I started realizing my best thinking got me where I'm at. Meaning, if I'm so great and so awesome and I got it all figured out, then why is it everything around me sucks? Because at the end of the day, I put myself in every single one of those situations. I chose the job. I chose the friends. I chose the relationship. I'm the one who's putting forth the effort or lack thereof in all those situations. And so I had to force myself to thinking, hey, my best thinking, meaning the way I value things, the way I judge things, how I make my decisions, is causing me all the stuff that I'm getting at the moment. And that was, that's for an arrogant, cocky dude, that's a very hard moment, man. I remember the first time I heard your best thinking got you here. Those are like fighting words, man. Think about that. Next time you're upset, think about the next time, life is kind of kicking you in the stomach a little bit and not giving you what you want and you're upset. Think about somebody coming up to you and say, hey, your best thinking got you here. You're not going to be very happy with that. But once again, I was teachable because, life was humbling me at that moment and giving me an opportunity to progress and learn or to revert back. I took that as an opportunity to progress and learn. So I became teachable. I came to the point where I was willing to look outside myself for another way, basically. And for a lot of men specifically, it's a very hard thing to do is look outside ourselves, right? We like to think, we like to walk around as if we got all the answers and we know everything. Even though we don't, right? We're just doing the best we can and we're failing miserably like everybody else. But, and what I say to those guys when I'm doing groups, what I say to them is instead of looking at it as a weakness, look at that as just the next logical step, right? And the analogy, excuse me, the analogy that I give a lot of times is, if you're going up to this building and you got this key ring and there's 15, 20 keys on this key ring, and you're trying to get into this building. You don't know which key which key fits into the hole. It's it's storming, it's lightning, it's thundering, it's hailing outside. It's completely miserable, and all you want to do is get inside. And you take the first key, and you're making your best, educated guess. Essentially, this is the key that's going to open the door. You put it in, it doesn't work. You flip it around, you put it in, it doesn't work. You do everything you can do, and that key doesn't work. Well, how long are you going to continue to try that same exact key before you finally say to yourself, the next logical step is to try the next key on the key ring? And that's what I mean. In that situation, none of us would look at that and say, that's weak, that's stupid, what's wrong with you, by moving to the next key. It just seems like the next logical step. We would all think, hey, of course, why would you not? Well, much in life, if life isn't giving what you want, if you're constantly walking away from people or situations or environments and thinking to yourself, well, that sucked, or why is life doing this to me? It's not fair. Maybe we need to stop trying to make that same key fit into the same hole. Maybe it's time for us to step back and say, you know what? The next logical step is to look for a different way. And I'm going to stop there for a minute and make sure I define what better way means. Better way doesn't mean I'm going to keep my same way of thinking and slightly modify it. What I mean by that is we gotta throw it all in the trash and start over. And I say that because I've had a lot of clients over the years, students, whatever you want to call them, that have come to me and I've tried to teach them, the Buddhist path essentially to help them find enlightenment, happiness. And more often than not, what I see gets a lot of them in trouble is our refusal as human beings to let go of what we think is the right way, right? Because we don't realize what we've decided is the right way sometimes is due to faulty wiring or faulty thinking. Situations occurred that have affected how we view things, and we don't want to admit that to ourselves. So we still try to say, well, this is the right way. This is the only way. And then when somebody tells us something different, it's like, okay, great. How can I fit that into what I'm already doing? That gets you in trouble. Because much in the same way is, and once again, the only analogy, and I'm big on analogies, is, if you were back in school and you're trying to turn in like a term paper or a big essay or something, and you turn it into your teacher and they gave it back to you with a ton of red marks and corrections, most of us wouldn't then try to erase it and keep it on the same paper and just do it over it. We would, because there's so many, we would just take those corrections and start a new page and rewrite the whole thing, because you just can't. Same concept. We can't just rewrite over what we're doing. We got to completely change our perspective on what we're doing and how we're doing it. So that's kind of the path that we have to go down. So anyways, so for me, I became teachable. That was the moment that I said, all right, my best thinking is not getting me where I need to be anymore. And it kind of happened oddly enough, right? My whole life, I've been interested in like the Eastern philosophy. For those of you who know me, tattoos are all, Japanese or Chinese. So Buddhism, for me, it was always available, right? Especially now we have internet and things of that nature. It's not like it's unavailable. But for whatever reason, I never cared enough to really search for another way. But once again, that moment was teachable, humbling, which caused me to be teachable. And consequently, I was Where was I at? I was at my friend's tattoo shop actually. I was getting getting a tattoo at his shop, and I was getting the food dogs on my feet, and sitting there getting a tattoo, and I looked over and I see a book on his shelf, and the book on his shelf, it was a gentleman on the front cover. He was tattooed kind of similar to myself, and I don't know, it looked cool. It just looked like a cool thing. And I've known this tattooist for years. He's tattooed me all over the place. A very cool guy. I respect him and respect his opinion. And so I was like, hey, what is that book? And he kind of started telling me it was about Buddhism and told me a little bit about the author and what they wrote. And he said it was a really cool book. And then he gave it to me, which, maybe for him at that moment, it was nothing. I've given away countless books at this point. For him, it might have been nothing, but for me, it was life changing because once again, I was teachable. I was willing to listen to something else. And so I hate reading, by the way, just so y'all know. I'm more of I like to watch. I just can't stand reading. But he gave me that book, and partly because of respect for him, and the other part of just my flat out curiosity and willingness to learn, I went home and I read it. I read the entire thing, and it blew me away. Having said that, it took me forever, right? Because I didn't just read it to finish it. I wasn't reading it because it was a to-do list type of thing. I was reading it because I legitimately wanted something different out of it. And so what I did was, and I urge everybody who's listening to do the same thing. As we progress during this journey and we start to learn more, and some of you guys start to offer some feedback and ask questions via social media, emails, whatever, and I start to answer some of those questions. I encourage you to do the same thing I did, and that is, as you learn better, do better. So as you learn something, as you figure it out, look for situations in your life to apply that and see what happens. So for me, what I would do is I would set aside some time every night to read. I would, a half hour, whatever it may be. And I would go home, I would read, and then I would try to do my best to understand it intellectually. And then what would happen is the next day, I said, okay, let me apply that. Most of the time I completely disagree with it, right? Because once again, I'm still mean. I'm still very arrogant. I think I have all the answers, but you know what? Let me try this anyways. And so I would walk into a situation, and I had plenty of them, mind you, because my life was not what I wanted it to be. So I had plenty of situations to apply what I learned. And what I would do is during a situation, I would say, hey, all right, what's the most skillful way to handle this? And I would handle it skillfully, or as skillfully as I knew how. And then I would walk away. Now, I would walk away from the situation still thinking I thought that person was an idiot. But the biggest difference was I was okay with it. Like, I didn't need to do anything about it. And that, to me, is where it started. In other words, I didn't come out the gate, being the Dharma guy, right? I was still me. But I walked away from the situation thinking, whatever. Yeah, I think he's an idiot, but I don't need to do anything about it. And then slowly, I would do more and more. As I read more, as I learned better, I would do better. And then what would happen is, years later, I look back, and my entire life is completely different. Who I am, or the things that I do, how people see me, that's completely different. Who I am today, I would have laughed at you had you told me 10 years ago this is who I would be. There's no way. And had you told me at the start of my journey this is where I would be, honestly, I wouldn't have done it because I wouldn't have liked who I am right now. I would have been like, that guy's a loser. I don't want to be him. But progressively, over time, this is where I got to be by making those little kind of changes. So that was my second moment. So once again, big on moments. And so I thought I changed. I thought I was good. Sorry. First moment got me from doing all the adolescent type behavior and the criminal activity. Turn my life around, kind of stop breaking the law, making good money, making good decisions. Still had my anger and angst. Once again, I thought it was justified, essentially. Second moment taught me, hey, maybe my perspective isn't the right perspective. Maybe my perspective is just a perspective, right? And we have to understand truth. Truth is 360. Truth isn't just mine. It's everybody's perspective. And so I had to learn to view things from different perspectives at that point. So here I am, after my second moment, did a lot of work. By this time, I'm already the Dharma guy. I've already had the privilege of teaching this to, gosh, man, I don't even know, hundreds of, if not thousands of people at this point via different treatment facilities, text messages, phone calls, emails, whatever. I had the privilege of teaching a lot of people. And a lot of people came to me and viewed me as this like Zen type of guy. And I thought it was awesome and fantastic. However, I got to practice what I preach. So I have to remain humble. And I have to constantly look for ways to grow and look for ways to say, hey, I can do better. And so uh, being the fact that I wanted to be better, I had to realize my third moment, if you will, and there's some personal situations. Maybe I will, maybe I won't get into later. Who knows? Personal situations going on in my life that I found myself holding on to resentments, and it wasn't like me. I was finally at a point in my life where I could easily let go of resentments, and it wasn't something that bothered me. But in this particular arena, I just could not seem to hold back these resentments. Now, mind you, there's a lot of other things going on. For those of you who've been paying attention to the Couch Live, there's a there's a copious amounts of medical issues happening with me at the moment. Low testosterone, crazy weight gain, things of that nature that we're hopefully finally getting to the end of. However, it created a lot of stuff that I just wasn't adept to dealing with. And then once again, personal matters were happening that were complicating that whole thing. So for me, it just seems like that's how I learn best is a perfect storm of stuff. So Terrence actually is involved in two of my three moments. And actually our producer over here, Louis, is sort of kind of connected to it as well. But my point being, third moment, um, having these crazy resentments that I can't get rid of. So I finally talked to my friend Terrence. I was on the phone with him. And I was like, dude, I can't let this go for some reason. I don't know why. I'm just holding on to these resentments. And, whether you believe in signs or not, who knows? Maybe you do, maybe don't. But for me, I realized that, the universe, if you will, was trying to tell me something. Because Louis here has made a few comments over the last, I don't know, 8 months to a year that we've been kind of working a lot closer together. He's made little comments that for whatever reason, whether he meant to or not, spoke to me, sort of. At the time it didn't, but it has afterwards. And so, talking to my buddy and kind of realizing, hey, why? He kept asking me, why? Why can't you let this go? And then I started realizing some of the stuff that Louis told me, and what it came down to was the little kid inside of me, right? The little kid inside of me just couldn't stop. And what I mean is there's a lot of stuff that I went through and I saw in an early age that, once again, nobody told me how to cope with. So I learned the best way I knew how. And what that did was it taught me to get over my powerlessness as at an early age by becoming powerful. And so as a little kid, that fear of powerlessness and that feeling of that kind of set the course of my life. And so what I did was, whether I intended to or not, I aimed out to be the biggest, meanest, nastiest dude that I could, all in a sense so nobody would take my power from me ever again. Like, it's never going to happen. And of course it came relatively easy. I'm over 6 foot and well over 200 pounds. Spent a lot of time in the gym and a tattoo. All that stuff kind of equals together to saying, hey, leave me alone. Don't take my power. So problem with that, though, is not everybody's out to get your power. And so when you're constantly looking for somebody taking your power, you're going to find it. Whether it's there or not, you're going to find it somehow, somewhere. And that's what I was doing in a lot of my personal life. I was finding my power being ripped away from me, whether it was really happening or not. That's how I was seeing it. And that's where my resentment was coming from. Because out of all the work that I did and not getting, not doing the criminal activity anymore, with letting go a lot of my rage and anger, the one thing I realized I never did was I never found out my why. And that's very important. My why being why. Why do I feel the way I feel about certain things? Why do I, why does this make me angry? Why do I see disrespect in this when nobody else does, or to the degree that nobody else does? And so my why was important. And in figuring out my why, it kind of was another moment, if you will, like I said. And that's what I mean by we all can be better. We can all take moments in our lives to try to be better. Instead of looking around for everybody else and blaming other people, which is very, very easy to do, mind you. We're excellent at it. We need to look inward. And I know it's an old cliche, when one finger pointing out, three fingers pointing in. Having said that, there's a reason why that cliche came about, guys. There's some truth to it, I don't think that any of us set out to be who we are. We kind of just ended up where we're at. And what I mean by that is just things took place in our lives that guide us towards where we're at currently. And we can either choose to continue to be passive in that situation, or we could choose to not be passive and say, hey, look, I'm going to kind of direct this and I'm going to educate myself and learn more. And so in a long, drawn out way, that's essentially what Dharma time is going to be, or what it aims to be, is over the coming months. My goal is to try to impart, what little bit of wisdom I've gained over my experiences in my life and the people I have around me, is to try to help individuals who are listening kind of learn to cope with some of the stuff that life happens. We can all relate to suffering. We can all relate to, wondering why life is doing this to me. Why is this happening? Why do I feel this way? Why can't I get over this? Or man, I just really want to be happy, but I can't seem to find it. Things of that nature. My goal is to have the show be sort of a sounding block for a lot of us, and an opportunity to at least start the process of learning, be the catalyst. I don't plan to change lives here, but at the very least, if you can hear something, and then maybe that starts a conversation elsewhere in your life. Maybe it makes you go to a tattoo shop and look at a book and say, hey, I want to learn more. Who knows? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But that's the aim of it. Anyways, that's essentially who I am, for the most part. That's why we're here. It's something I'm very, very passionate about. And for those of you who've been through my groups and classes, by all means, you kind of know that it is my passion. I do have a tendency of being somewhat blunt. Apologize ahead of time if I offend anybody, but those are moments, and I think that it's important for us as individuals to constantly look for moments, to constantly look for ways to improve, looking for ways where we can be better. Instead of walking away from a situation and saying, "Man, this person was, what a loser," what a whatever adjective you like to use. Mine would probably all be profanity, which I'm not going to say at the moment. Instead of walking away thinking that, let's walk away from the situation and say, man, how could I have handled that differently? Or if there's somebody close to you in your love life, or your personal life, your kids, your friends, or whatever it may be, remembering that those people deserve compassion. And as much as those people deserve compassion, there's one person in your life that deserves your love and compassion more than anybody else you'll ever come in contact with, and that's yourself. And what that looks like is different for everybody. But I know where it starts, and it starts with improving. It starts with looking inward and saying, how can I be better? How can I learn to do differently? And for me, it took moments. I'm that guy. My sons probably could have followed the same path. I've got my 6-year-old son. He's Trinity Junior, and boy, is he Junior. He's going to have to learn the hard way, I'm sure. It seems that. But I know for me, that's what it took. It took some very humbling moments in my life. It took a lot of perfect storm type situations to take place that were essentially, so bad, if you will, so emotional, so draining that I had to listen, because I didn't. Whether it be, in your own life or other people's lives, your friends, family, we can all relate to that on some level, be it ourselves, where people are constantly telling us, man, you should do this differently, or hey, you shouldn't be that. And we're like, oh, well, you just don't understand. You don't get it. Or you have a friend or family member that you're telling that to. Like, hey, you really shouldn't be this way. Because don't think for one second, guys, that I wasn't this angry, person and full of rage and everything else, that I didn't have people in my life that would come to me and say, hey, maybe you shouldn't be so mad, I had tons of those people, but that's not where I was at on my journey. I wasn't teachable. I wasn't ready to hear it. And so I think it's important for all of us to try to set that tone where we're constantly ready to be better, where we don't pass an opportunity to learn better and be better and do better. Because I think that's what inhibits a lot of us, is we get stuck in our path and our way, and we confuse right with happy. And the problem with right and happy is, man, like I used to, I still like to be right. And if you ask my wife, I'm sure she'll tell you that I love being right. But I finally got to a point in my life where happy is my choice. I'd much rather be happy than right. Y'all can have right. The reason why is because right is so exhausting. It's so exhausting to be right. And the sad part about it is every time you're right, there's another one right behind it you got to battle. It's a never-ending process, and it's exhausting, and it's not a lifestyle I want to live anymore. And so for me, when I made the choice to make happiness my priority, then looking inward just kind of makes sense, because now I'm no longer looking for ways of justifying my own actions because I'm trying to be right. Now I'm looking for ways like, maybe I could have handled that differently. Let me see. And I think when we start to kind of do that, you'll notice in every area of your life it starts to make a difference. In how you feel about yourself, how you relate to those around you, how you're able to be of a benefit for those around you as well. Not just, the relationships where you take, but the relationships where you give, whether it be mentorship, kids, whatever, coworkers, spouses. You'll notice that things start to morph and change. And that's a good thing. Change is a good thing. And so I think that's where we're kind of heading at the moment. Having said that, some more housekeeping. Once again, I want to thank Jake Atkins, bro. Like, you told me you were going to listen. I hope you're listening. If not, I'm going to reach out to you later. Amazing intro, bro. I love it. It is everything I want it to be. It gets me hyped up every time I hear it. Secondly, I want to thank our sponsors for the Problem Solving Network. Journey Pure, you guys are awesome. You're at our golf tournament every year. You guys are fun. I love playing with you guys. I'm not, I'm not a golfer, but thank you for letting me at least pretend to be a golfer every now and then. I appreciate it. I look forward to continuing to build this relationship with you guys. You're an awesome facility. Next one is Retreat. It's a long name. I want to mess it up. Hold on. It is Retreat Premier Addiction Centers. It's a mouthful, but they're a good place, good company as well.
Addiction treatment centers.
Is it? See, look at that producer.
Correct.
I had it written down right, I guess. See, this is what I mean by heavy lifting. You're the one that always does the calls and everything else. This is all new for me. I gotta kind of. I'm rusty here.
I would have stayed silent, but you can't mess up a sponsor's name.
Of course not. That was just my way of getting you to come back in. That's what it was. Anyways, as I said, I'm not used to heavy lifting, so I'll get there. I don't have to do the call letters. Having said that, if you guys are interested in knowing more about them, which you should, you can feel free to go to nowmattersmore.org and go to our resources page. You'll see them on there. For those of you who don't know as well, I am the president of the Now Matters More Foundation, so we are indirectly another sponsor here for the station, and that helps with drug and alcohol addiction. By all means, go check that out. I'm not going to make this a Now Matters More episode, but I will say, go check it out. Feel free to donate. Give anything you can. Support us. Share our stuff. You'll see. We just put a fundraiser on Facebook. I think it's still going on until the 12th. We gained, what was it, over $300, I think, at this point, which between that and one of our listeners, Push Past Paralysis, I think her real name is Marissa, she also did a fundraiser. And together, those two fundraisers allowed us to send somebody to treatment. And so doing good work. So they're not just sponsors who we just have to say, hey, they're paying the bills. No, they're legitimate good companies. We wouldn't take a sponsor on that we wouldn't trust our own family towards. I also want to send a shout out to Orange County because they've been a supporter for the not only the Now Matters More Foundation, but also in what we do here at WPSN99.com. Got some good stuff on here. We have, of course, the Couch Live every Friday from 12 to 1. I'm on there as well as a co-host with our lovely producer here, the Dope Doctor. And he's not usually wearing sandals and stuff at that point. I don't know why. I guess he can dress down during this one. We have also the Lemon Show. What was it? The
Lemon Squeeze.
The Lemon Squeeze. Lemon Squeeze. And it's a very cool show. JoJo knows and Constance. Great people. I've listened to some of their shows. I plan on listening more. As a matter of fact, next week, my special guest host is going to be JoJo knows from the Lemon Squeeze. So you'll get a chance to see her up close and personal. She got a fantastic story. I think she fits in next week with what I'm trying to talk about. So you guys will get a chance to meet her. I think that's most of the housekeeping I have. We got holidays coming up. By all means, this is a fantastic time to start our process of learning to do better and learning to be better. That's a great gift to everybody. We talk about in the Couch Live, we talk about addiction and how trying to clean up your life and get clean and sober is a fantastic gift to give to your family and even yourself during the holiday season. I'm going to go a step further and even say for everybody, kind of being better, essentially being a better husband, better wife, better brother, better daughter, better son, better mother, better friend, better anything is also a great gift to give to not only ourselves but the people around us. So right now is a fantastic time to start that process, man. And for those of you who need a date, you got the first of the year coming right up. New year, new you. Why not? Anything else I'm forgetting here, producer? I think we got it all covered up. I think let's hit the music, maestro. And remember, be better. That's all it takes.